Good morning and welcome back to Withrow Urban Homestead. Today we're going to pot up onions. Now I've already prepared some 4-inch pots. And the soil we're going to use is Pro Mix Organic Garden Potting Soil. I really like that it's been inoculated with microscopic fungus. It helps to inoculate the soil and it helps the root system. Now we sowed these onion seeds 3 weeks ago. Now in 2 weeks, we're going to start bringing these outside to get used to the weather, the wind and the sun. It's called hardening them off. It's going to be about 6 weeks before our last frost. You can start hardening them off anywhere between 4 and 6 weeks before your last frost. Here that means at the beginning of March. And 2 weeks after that, we're going to plant them into the garden in a sunny location. And that's going to be 4 weeks before our last freeze. That's going to be mid-March here. Now the onions are going to stay in these pots 1 month before putting them out into the garden. Now, you could leave them in the soil blocks 1 more month, but I have the pots, the soil, the time, and the space, so I'm going to go ahead and pot them up. I just want to give them more room to grow, but that's really not necessary. Now, whether you leave them in the soil blocks or pot them up, you do want to thin them at about 2 to 3 weeks after you've sown them, and you only want 1 onion plant per block or pot. Now, some people trim the tops of their onions, but I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to leave them as they are. Now, onions require cool weather to grow the green tops, the green leaves. And the onion need nice big green tops, leaves, to grow a big bulb. Those leaves collect the energy from the sun to make that bulb. And that's the reason I'm not going to trim my tops. So each leaf develops a layer of the onion, the rings. Each leaf is responsible for developing their own layer. So the more leaves you have, the bigger your onions are going to be. An onion tends to have about 8 to 12 leaves, but not all of them are going to survive to maturity. In young onions, 1 or 2 leaves are going to kind of die off. Now, if cool weather helps the leaves grow and develop, what causes them to bulb up? Well, that's based on the light from the sun, how long the day is, how many hours of daylight they're getting. When they hit the required number of hours of daylight, then they start forming those bulbs. So if you're growing long day onions, which require 14 hours of sunlight to start developing bulbs, if you're growing those in the deep south, you're never going to have bulbs. Now in the south, you need to grow what's called short day onions. They only require 12 hours of light to start bulbing up. Then there's intermediate day onions, and they require 12 to 14 hours of sunlight to develop bulbs. Now here in north central Maryland, I can grow both intermediate day and long day onions. Now I'm growing 3 varieties, 2 long day and 1 intermediate day. These are Walla Walla onions. And less of them germinated, so if I have 2 growing together in one block, I can separate them and pot them up individually. Now, Walla Walla are a sweet, short storage onion. I'm also growing Spanish yellow sweet onions, and those store for 6 months, and a small red Italian flat onion. And it's an heirloom, and it'll also store for about 6 months, and I'm using my own saved seeds. Now, they do best growing leaves at 55 degrees to 65 degrees, but this room tends to run 65 to 75 degrees. So after I get them all potted up, I'm going to move them to the front room of the basement where it's colder. It's going to be the perfect place. Now I'm going to want to make sure I label these onions, because these Walla Walla onions, they're bigger and they're going to require more space than the red flat Italian onions, which is a small onion and requires less space. Plus, those are going to be ready in only 60 days, but the Walla Walla are going to take double the time at 125 days. So I want to make sure I plant them together so that when the little red Italian onions are done, I can harvest them and use that space for something else. Now I've got 1 tray left and several of each variety. So I'm going to get these potted up, then I'm going to show you their new home. They're going to grow in this location inside under the lights for 2 more weeks. Check back with us for an update. Thank you for visiting Withrow Urban Homestead. See you later. Bye-bye.